Hour 48 marked a turning point. The humans stopped running. They became hunters. The Apex Guard had consolidated around the final strategic objective, expecting the humans to attempt a direct assault. Instead, Jiwoo's team began a campaign of psychological destruction that the Krill warriors were completely unprepared for. It started with Private Young. He was the most damaged, his face still swollen, ribs grinding with every breath. Tae had given him enough stimulants to keep him functional, but everyone knew he was operating on borrowed time. That did not stop him from walking straight toward the Krill position. Human approaching, a Krill warrior reported. Single target. Heavily wounded. It is a trick, another warrior said. They are trying to lure us out, but Young just kept walking. He stopped 50 meters from their defensive position, standing in plain sight. Then he sat down on a rock and pulled out a combat ration. He began eating, casual as if he was on a picnic rather than a battlefield. One Krill warrior could not contain himself. The disrespect was too much. He charged forward, intending to eliminate this damaged human who dared to mock them. Young stood up slowly, every movement broadcasting pain. The Krill was on him in seconds, claws extended for a killing strike. Young did not even try to dodge. He took the hit straight in the chest, the force throwing him backward 10 feet. The Krill approached the body, satisfied. But Young's hand shot out and grabbed the warrior's ankle. The human's grip was weak. Pathetic, really, but the surprise made the Krill stumble. Young pulled himself up using the Krill's body, blood pouring from fresh wounds. His face was a mask of agony and determination. Still here, he whispered through broken teeth. Then he headbutted the Krill warrior. It did no real damage. The Krill's armored skull was far too thick, but the act itself, the sheer insane courage of a dying human attacking a superior opponent, broke something in the warrior's mind. The Krill threw Young away and retreated to his position, reporting to his commander. "Sir, there is something wrong with these humans. They should be dead. They need to be dead, but they just keep coming." Sergeant Bo-Ra was conducting her own operation. She had positioned herself on high ground with a sniper rifle. Her damaged leg was useless, so she had strapped herself into a stable firing position. She was not trying for kill shots. That would be impossible against Krill armor. Instead, she was targeting their equipment. A shot rang out. One Krill warrior's communication device exploded. Another shot destroyed a weapon. A third shot hit a water container. Each shot was precise, professional, and infuriating. The Krill tried to locate her position, but Bo-Ra had learned to shoot and relocate, dragging her useless leg behind her. By the time they reached her previous position, she was somewhere else lining up another shot. "We are being picked apart," a Krill warrior reported. "Not killed, just slowly destroyed." Lieutenant Hyun and Corporal Tae were working as a team. They had created multiple false camps throughout the jungle, each showing signs of human presence. The Krill would investigate these positions, wasting energy and time, only to find nothing. When warriors split up to search more efficiently, Hyun and Tae would isolate one and engage in brief combat. They could not win these fights. The Krill were still far too powerful, but they could delay the warrior for precious minutes before retreating, forcing the alien to chase them until they disappeared again. Jiwoo herself was the most dangerous. She had been watching the Krill warriors carefully, noting which ones showed the most fatigue. She targeted these individuals specifically, appearing from nowhere to engage them in close combat. She did not fight to win, she fought to exhaust. Every encounter lasted just long enough to force the Krill to exert maximum effort. Then she would disengage and vanish. The warrior would be left standing, victorious but more tired, and 20 minutes later she would appear again. One Krill warrior sat down during a quiet moment, his body demanding rest. Jiwoo materialized from the shadows behind him. She did not attack. She just spoke. "You have been fighting for 52 hours, she said quietly in English, knowing his translator would pick it up. "How much longer can you continue?" The warrior spun around, but Jiwoo was already gone. In the observation deck, the atmosphere was tense. Several alien delegates had been watching continuously for over 2 days now. What they were witnessing was rewriting their understanding of human capabilities. "They are not winning through strength," the insectoid ambassador observed. "They are winning through refusal to lose." "Is there a difference?" another delegate asked. "Apparently, yes." Vexithar stood like a statue watching his apex guard fall apart, not through injury, not through defeat, through simple grinding exhaustion. His warriors were still combat effective. They could still kill any human in direct confrontation, but they were operating at perhaps 60% efficiency now and dropping. The humans were at maybe 40%, but they had started at 40%. They had been operating at that level of damage and exhaustion for so long that it had become their normal state. "Colonel," Ambassador Day said quietly, appearing beside him. "Do you understand now?" Vexthar did not look at him. "Your captain is a monster. A brilliant, terrifying monster. She is human. This is what we are. Not individually powerful, but collectively unstoppable. We do not know when to quit because evolution never taught us that quitting was an option." Hour 58 arrived. The Apex Guard was down to 4 functional warriors. One had collapsed from exhaustion and had to be removed from the simulation by medical personnel. The remaining 4 were holding the final objective, but they were barely standing. Jiwoo's team converged on the position from multiple directions. They looked like corpses walking. Young's stimulants were wearing off and he was starting to shut down. Bora was being carried by Tae, her leg completely useless now. Hyun was limping badly, his fractured leg finally giving out. But they all had weapons in hand, and they all kept moving. The Krill warriors saw them coming, saw these broken, bleeding humans approaching like Terminators, and something inside them broke. "They will not stop," one warrior said, his voice hollow. "We have killed them a dozen times each, but they will not stop." The Krill squad leader made a decision. "Fall back to secondary position. We need rest before final confrontation." It was the first time in Apex Guard history that warriors had retreated from an enemy they, outnumbered and overpowered. Jiwoo watched them withdraw and allowed her team to collapse. They had 14 hours remaining. 14 hours to either capture the final objective or eliminate the remaining Krill. "Status," she said weakly. "Young is unconscious," Tae reported. "I cannot wake him safely. He needs real medical attention. Bora cannot walk. I am barely functioning. You and Hyun are both seriously injured." Tae looked at his captain. "Ma'am, we won. We broke them. Psychologically, we have already won." "But we have not completed the mission," Jiwoo said. She tried to stand and nearly fell. Hyun caught her. "Captain, we need to rest." "No," Jiwoo said firmly. "We need to finish this. Because if we do not, Vexthar will claim his warriors could have recovered and won. We need to prove that human persistence is not a temporary advantage. It is permanent." She looked at her team. 4 humans barely alive, having fought for almost 60 hours straight. But they were still conscious. "Still willing. 4 of us can still move," Jiwoo said. "That is enough." "Tae, stay with Young. The rest of us finish this." They moved toward the final objective. 3 broken soldiers on a mission that should have been impossible. The Krill warriors saw them coming and experienced true fear for the first time in their lives. These humans were not soldiers anymore. They were inevitability made flesh. Hour 24 arrived with a pale artificial dawn. The simulation environment was designed to test warriors under realistic conditions, which meant day-night cycles, temperature variations, and all the discomforts of actual wilderness survival. The Apex Guard had regrouped during the night, establishing a defensive position near one of the strategic objectives. This was a tactical retreat, though none of them would call it that. They were exhausted, frustrated, and deeply confused. The humans should have been eliminated by now, should have been bleeding out in the jungle, dead or dying. Instead, the humans were everywhere. "Movement Sector 3, one Krill warrior reported. He sounded tired. They all sounded tired. "Movement Sector 7, Contact Sector 2, human female, heavily damaged, pursuing." But when the warriors converged on these sightings, the humans would vanish. Or worse, they would stand and fight just long enough to land a few hits before retreating again. Human weapons were pathetic compared to Krill natural armaments, but they were persistent. A knife wound here, a gunshot there. Nothing fatal, but everything adding up. Corporal Tae, the medic, was proving his worth. He had linked up with Young and was working on the younger soldiers' injuries. Young's face was swollen beyond recognition, his jaw possibly broken, ribs definitely cracked. But Tae's hands were steady as he injected painkillers and anti-inflammatory drugs. "This is going to hurt," Tae warned. "Everything hurts," Young mumbled through his damaged mouth. "Just make me functional." Tae reset Young's dislocated shoulder with a sharp movement. Young's scream echoed through the jungle. Then the medic wrapped the shoulder and gave him a stimulant injection. "You should be in a hospital," Tay said quietly. Young tested his shoulder, wincing. "I should be a lot of things. But right now I need to be standing." He checked his weapon. "How much longer?" 48 hours. Young laughed, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through his ribs. 48 more hours of this. The Krill are going to wish they killed us when they had the chance. Lieutenant Hyun had found Sergeant Bo-Ra. Her leg was a mess, torn by krill claws and barely functional. She had improvised a tourniquet from her uniform and was still walking, though each step left a blood trail. "I can carry you," Hyun offered. His own leg was fractured, held together with a combat brace, but he was still the most mobile of the group. "No," Bo-Ra said firmly. "I can walk. Maybe not run, but I can walk. That is all I need to do." She pulled out her medical kit and injected herself with more painkillers. "How far to the rendezvous?" 2 miles. "Then let us move. Captain needs us in position before hour 30. They walked through the jungle, 2 broken soldiers moving with pure determination. Behind them, they could hear krill warriors searching, calling to each other in their harsh language. The aliens were getting frustrated. Their usual tactics were not working. Jiwoo had reached the first strategic objective. It was a small fortified position on high ground, easily defensible. The krill had left 1 guard, assuming humans would never make it this far. That guard was alert but tired, his movements showing the strain of constant activity. She approached silently, using skills learned in Earth's harshest environments. When she was close enough, she did not try to fight him. Instead, she threw a rock to create noise on the opposite side of the position. The krill guard turned, reflexes taking over. Jiwoo sprinted past him, grabbed the objective marker, and ran. The guard roared and gave chase, but Jiwoo had already disappeared into the dense undergrowth. 1 objective captured. 2 remaining. In the observation deck, the mood had shifted dramatically. What had started as expected human defeat had become something else entirely. The alien delegates were watching in fascination as humans refused to die properly. "They are like parasites," one insectoid delegate observed. "They cannot win direct confrontation, so they drain energy slowly." A reptilian ambassador shook his head. "No, they are pursuit predators. I have studied Earth biology. Their ancestors would track wounded animals for days until the prey collapsed from exhaustion and blood loss. They are doing the same to the krill." Vexithar stood silent, watching his warriors struggle. The Apex Guard was still superior in every measurable combat metric. They were faster, stronger, better armed, but they were designed for short, decisive battles. This was neither short nor decisive. Colonel, his second-in-command, reported from the simulation. "The warriors are requesting relief. They have been active for over 24 hours with minimal rest. The cold-blooded metabolism is affecting efficiency." "Denied," Vexthar said. "This is a test of combat effectiveness. If they cannot handle 72 hours of engagement, then we need to know." But he was beginning to understand what Jiwoo had known from the start. The krill had never needed to handle 72 hours of anything. Their wars were glorious and brief. They had optimized for overwhelming victory, not grinding endurance. Hour 30 arrived. The human team, all 5 members wounded and exhausted, had converged on the second strategic objective. This one was in a swamp, the water murky and chest-deep. 2 krill warriors guarded it, standing watch with visible fatigue. "We cannot fight them directly," Hyun said quietly. "Not in our condition." "We do not need to," Jiwoo replied. "We just need to outlast them." The humans slipped into the swamp water. The cold was shocking, making injuries scream with fresh pain. But the water also provided cover. They submerged until only their eyes and noses showed, moving with agonizing slowness toward the objective. The krill guards were alert, but their cold-blooded physiology made the swamp miserable. The water temperature was sapping their energy, making them sluggish. They wanted to leave this position, but duty held them in place. Young reached the objective first. He had to swim the last few feet, his broken ribs making every breath agony. He grabbed the marker and held it underwater, waiting. 1 krill guard noticed the disturbance. Movement in the water. Both warriors moved to investigate. As they did, Bora broke from cover on the opposite side, drawing their attention. The krill turned toward her, and in that moment of distraction, Young surfaced and placed the objective marker on the platform. 2 objectives captured. The Krill warriors roared in fury and charged toward Young. He did not try to fight. He submerged again and swam underwater, lungs burning until he was far enough away to surface safely. Young is clear, Tay reported. Second objective is ours. Vexthar's command channel exploded with reports. His warriors were angry now, professional discipline cracking. They had been fighting for 30 hours. 30 hours of chasing humans who would not die, who would not surrender, who just kept moving. Colonel, one warrior said, and Vexthar heard something that chilled him. Fear. What are these creatures? We kill them, but they do not die. We break them, but they do not stop. I have hunted on a dozen death worlds and never seen anything like this. Jiwoo listened to the intercepted Krill communications and allowed herself a small smile. The psychological warfare was working. The Apex Guard was not just physically exhausted. They were mentally breaking down. They were facing something their evolution had never prepared them for. An enemy that simply would not acknowledge defeat. Final objective is heavily guarded, Hyun reported. 5 warriors, fresh defensive position. We cannot take it directly. We do not need to, Jiwoo said. We just need to make them chase us for 40 more hours. She gathered her team. They looked terrible. Blood-soaked, broken, barely standing, but their eyes were clear, determined. Phase 3, she said simply. We stop running. Now we hunt them. The simulation arena was perfect in its cruelty. Dense jungle pressed in from all sides, the canopy blocking most light. The humidity was crushing, designed to challenge both cold-blooded and warm-blooded species equally. Somewhere in this artificial wilderness, 3 strategic points waited to be captured, but Jiwoo had no intention of going for them yet. The Apex Guard moved with military precision, their heavy forms somehow silent despite their size. They had spread out into a hunting formation, each warrior covering a sector. They were doing exactly what Jiwoo had predicted. They were hunting. Contact in 30 seconds, Hyun whispered through the comm system. He was crouched in thick undergrowth watching a Krill warrior pass below his position. Should I engage? Negative, Jiwoo responded. Let him see you. Then run. Hyun stood up, deliberately snapping a branch. The Krill warrior spun with incredible speed, his black eyes locking onto the human. For a moment they stared at each other. Then Hyun ran. The chase was immediate and brutal. The Krill warrior moved like lightning, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Hyun crashed through the jungle, his lighter body able to slip through gaps the larger Krill had to smash through. But even with that advantage, the alien was gaining. Contact, Hyun gasped into his comm. He is fast. Really fast, I know, Jiwoo said calmly. Keep running. Do not let him catch you. In the observation deck high above the simulation, hundreds of alien delegates watched on holographic displays. Ambassador Day stood with his hands clenched, watching Hyun barely stay ahead of his pursuer. The Krill warrior was reaching for him, claws extending. Vexthar stood with his arms crossed, looking satisfied. Your lieutenant will not last another minute. But Hyun did last. He lasted 5 minutes, then 10. The Krill warrior was still faster, still stronger, but Hyun was lighter and more desperate. Every time those claws came close, he would twist, dodge, sacrifice his uniform to raking claws that barely missed flesh. At 15 minutes, something changed. The Krill warrior was still pursuing, but his speed had decreased slightly. Not much, just a fraction. But Hyun noticed. Captain, he gasped. He is slowing down. Good, keep going. Across the jungle, Private Young was having his own encounter. He had deliberately walked into an open area, making himself an obvious target. The Krill warrior who found him did not waste time with words. He simply attacked. Young tried to dodge but was not fast enough. The Krill's fist caught him in the chest with the force of a sledgehammer. Young flew backward and slammed into a tree trunk hard enough to crack the bark. He slumped to the ground, blood running from his mouth. The Krill warrior approached to confirm the kill. Human bones were fragile. That strike should have caved in the human's chest. Young stood up. The Krill stopped, confused. The human should be dead or at least unconscious. But Young was rising to his feet, one hand pressed against his ribs, blood dripping from his lips. And he was smiling. That all you got? Young said in Korean, knowing the translator would convey the meaning even if it missed the exact words. The Krill attacked again. This time Young managed a partial dodge, but the alien's claws raked across his shoulder, tearing skin and muscle. Young screamed but did not fall. Instead, he laughed. a high, slightly hysterical sound that echoed through the jungle. Then he ran. The Krill warrior pursued, now with something beyond military discipline. There was anger there, confusion. This human should be dead, should be broken. But he was running, laughing, bleeding everywhere and somehow still moving. In the observation deck, several alien delegates were making concerned sounds. One crystalline being spoke to her neighbor. "The human is damaged. Why does he continue fighting?" Nobody had an answer. Sergeant Bora was conducting her own operation. She had found a Krill warrior and immediately started running, not in panic, not in fear, in steady, measured strides. A marathon pace the Krill followed because that is what Krill did. They pursued prey until it fell, but Bora did not fall. She ran through the jungle at a pace she could maintain for hours. When the terrain opened up, she ran faster. When it became dense, she maintained her rhythm. The Krill was faster. Much faster. He caught up to her within 10 minutes and lunged for her back. Bora dodged at the last second and the Krill's claws caught her shoulder instead of her spine. She grunted in pain but kept running. This happened again at 15 minutes. The Krill tore a chunk from her leg. Bora stumbled, blood pouring down her calf, but she kept moving. At 30 minutes, the Krill caught her fully, throwing her to the ground. He pinned her with one massive hand, claws digging into her chest. "You are finished, human." Bora looked up at him with calm eyes. "I have run 40 miles with a broken ankle. This is nothing." She brought her knee up hard into the Krill's midsection. It did no real damage but surprised him enough that his grip loosened. Bora rolled away and started running again. The Krill warrior stood there for a moment, trying to understand what had just happened. Then he roared in frustration and gave chase. Ji-Woo monitored all of this from her position deeper in the jungle. Her team was getting hurt, getting broken, exactly as planned. The Krill were doing what they did best, delivering overwhelming damage in short bursts. But they were not fighting multiple enemies. They were fighting one enemy, spread across multiple bodies, an enemy that absorbed punishment and kept moving. "Status reports," she said calmly into the comm. 3 broken ribs. Hyun gasped. "Still mobile. Puncture wounds, shoulder and leg," Bora reported, her breathing steady despite the injuries. "Still running. Internal bleeding, possible broken jaw," Young said, his voice thick. "Still breathing. Good," Ji-Woo said. "Phase 2 begins now. Lead them to the swamp." In the observation deck, Vexthar was no longer smiling. His apex guard had landed killing blows, multiple killing blows. But the humans were still moving, still fighting. One of his warriors had reported something that made no sense. "Colonel," the warrior's voice came through his command channel. The small human. "I broke his ribs. I heard them crack." But he smiled at me. He smiled and ran away. "What are they?" Vexthar had no answer. In 200 years of warfare, the Apex Guard had never encountered anything like this. Species either died when you killed them, or they surrendered when injured. These humans did neither. The simulation timer showed 8 hours had passed. The Krill warriors had been running, fighting, pursuing for 8 straight hours. They were beginning to tire. Nothing dramatic. Just small signs, slower reactions, heavier breathing. The humans were also tired. More than tired. They were damaged, bleeding, broken, but they were still moving at the same pace. Their faces showed pain, but their eyes showed something else. Determination, stubbornness, an absolute refusal to stop. "Colonel," one of his warriors said, and Vexthar heard something he had never heard before. "Uncertainty. They will not break. We keep hitting them, but they do not break." As night fell, the temperature dropped. The Krill warriors, being cold-blooded, began to slow down noticeably. Their movements became more sluggish. They needed rest, needed warmth. The humans, warm-blooded mammals with internal temperature regulation, kept moving at full speed. Ji-Woo smiled in the darkness. The real hunt was just beginning. The human quarters on Omega-7 were small and cramped compared to the spaces allocated to other species. Ji-Woo sat at a metal table, holographic displays floating in the air around her, showing personnel files and combat records. Lieutenant Hyun paced behind her, his footsteps quick and nervous. "This is insane," he said for the 3rd time. "The Apex Guard are killers. Professional soldiers bred specifically for war. They have redundant organ systems, armored skin, and strength that makes our best look like children." "I know," Ji-Woo said, scrolling through another file. "They can bench press small vehicles, Captain, They have enhanced reflexes. They have been fighting wars since before humanity invented the wheel. I know. Then why did you accept? Jiwoo looked up at him. Hyun was a good officer, smart, loyal, and brave. But he was thinking about this all wrong. Everyone was thinking about this wrong. Because Vexthar made a mistake, she said. He challenged us to a 72-hour simulation. Not a quick battle, not a raid. 3 full days, Hyun stopped pacing. I don't understand. You will. Jiwoo pulled up a new hologram, this one showing krill physiology. What do you see? Hyun studied the image. Cold-blooded, reptilian, extremely dense muscle tissue. Multiple hearts. Backup lungs. Heavily armored. Built like a tank. Keep going. High twitch muscle fibers for explosive strength. Enhanced sensory organs. Claws, teeth, natural weapons. Captain, this just proves my point. They are superior in every measurable way. Every measurable way that matters in a short fight, Jiwoo corrected. She zoomed in on the krill circulatory system. But look at this. Their metabolism is designed for burst activity. Short, intense combat. Their species evolved as ambush predators. They would hide, strike with overwhelming force, and end battles in minutes. So they have no experience with prolonged warfare. Their longest recorded combat engagement is 6 hours. Most end in under 1 hour. Jiwoo pulled up human physiology next to the krill image. Now look at us. Hyun studied the comparison. Humans looked pathetic next to the krill. Smaller, weaker, no natural weapons or armor. But as he looked closer, he began to see what Jiwoo was showing him. Our cardiovascular system, she said, pointing. We are endurance specialists. We can regulate our body temperature through sweating. We can maintain consistent activity for days. We evolved as persistence hunters. Hyun. Our ancestors would chase prey for 20, 30, 40 miles until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. But that was hunting animals, not fighting warriors. War is hunting, Jiwoo said simply. Just a different kind of prey. Ambassador Day entered the room looking exhausted. Earth Command is furious. They want to withdraw the challenge. They say it's suicide. Tell them it's too late, Jiwoo said. The challenge has been accepted publicly. Withdrawing now would be worse than losing. Day sank into a chair. Then help me understand, Captain. What is your plan? Jiwoo began pulling up personnel files. I need to select my team, but not the way you think. She dismissed the files of humanity's strongest soldiers, their best marksmen, their most aggressive fighters. Instead, she pulled up different records. Hyun and Day watched in confusion as she selected seemingly random personnel. Sergeant Bora, Jiwoo said, highlighting a female soldier. Former marathon runner. Completed a 70-mile endurance race in the Australian outback. Has a documented pain tolerance in the 98th percentile. Corporal Tay, she continued. Trained as both a combat medic and survival expert. Spent 6 months alone in the Arctic as part of an extreme environment study. Exceptional at field medicine and keeping soldiers functional under stress. Private Young, former underground fighting champion. No formal military training before enlisting, but has won 32 bare-knuckle matches. Never been knocked out. Just keeps getting back up. Day looked horrified. Captain, you are selecting for endurance and pain tolerance, not combat effectiveness. Exactly. But the krill will destroy them in direct combat.
Yes, Jiwoo agreed.
They will. Over and over again. And my people will get back up. Over and over again. Until the krill realize they are not in a fight. They are in a marathon they do not know how to run. Hyun was beginning to understand. You are going to make them chase us. More than that. We are going to break them psychologically. The krill have never fought an enemy that refuses to stay down. They have never experienced true prolonged warfare. Their combat doctrine has no answer for an opponent who treats broken bones and torn muscles as minor inconveniences. She pulled up a final hologram, showing krill historical battles. Every single one followed the same pattern. Overwhelming initial assault. Enemy breaks. Battle ends. Clean, efficient, brutal. They have never had to dig deep, Jiwoo said quietly. They have never had to push through pain and keep fighting. They have never had to ignore their body's signals and operate on pure willpower. But humans? She looked at her 2 colleagues. We have been doing that since we lived in caves. Day was quiet for a long moment. You are counting on human stubbornness. I'm counting on human persistence. It is not the same thing. Jiwoo stood and began organizing the mission briefing. Stubbornness is refusing to acknowledge defeat. Persistence is not recognizing defeat as an option in the first place. Over the next 2 days, Jiwoo drilled her team relentlessly. She did not teach them how to fight Krill warriors in single combat. That was pointless. Instead, she taught them how to disengage, how to retreat, how to lead pursuers into traps, how to operate while injured. She made them run for hours while she shouted in their ears. She made them solve complex problems while exhausted. She taught them to reset dislocated shoulders, to splint broken bones, to keep moving even when every nerve screamed for rest. The Krill, meanwhile, prepared in their traditional way. They sharpened their natural claws. They performed ritual combat dances. They meditated on violence and perfection. Their preparation looked impressive and terrifying. On the morning of the simulation, both teams assembled at the arena entrance. The Apex Guard stood in perfect formation, each warrior a monument to evolutionary superiority. They looked at the human team with open contempt. Jiwoo's squad looked small and fragile by comparison. But they stood straight, eyes forward, ready for what was coming. Vexthar approached Jiwoo one final time. "It is not too late to withdraw, Captain. I will allow you to save face," Jiwoo smiled. "Colonel, has anyone ever told you about persistence hunting?" "No." "You are about to learn." The simulation doors opened, revealing a dense jungle environment. Somewhere in that artificial wilderness were 3 strategic objectives. Somewhere in that terrain, one team would break. The Apex Guard entered first, moving with the confidence of predators entering familiar territory. Jiwoo's team followed, and as they crossed the threshold, Jiwoo whispered to her soldiers, "Remember, we do not need to be stronger. We just need to be the last ones standing." The doors closed behind them. 72 hours began. The conference hall stretched across the entire observation deck of Omega-7, a massive orbital station that floated above the blue-green world of Sanctuary Prime. Through the transparent dome overhead, a dozen alien warships hung in formation, each representing a different member species of the Galactic Coalition. Captain Jiwoo stood at attention near the back of the human delegation, her dark eyes scanning the assembled dignitaries and military commanders. She had seen many things in her 12 years of military service. She had fought in the resource wars on Earth. She had led rescue operations in collapsed orbital habitats. She had even survived 3 weeks alone in the Australian outback after a training accident. But nothing in her experience had prepared her for the casual contempt in Colonel Vexthar's voice. The Krill commander stood nearly 9 feet tall, his reptilian body covered in natural armor plates that gleamed under the station's lights. His species had evolved on a high-gravity death world where everything wanted to kill everything else. The Krill had climbed to the top of their food chain through sheer physical dominance. They were fast, strong, and nearly impossible to kill. Their military record spoke for itself. 200 years without a single combat loss. Humans, Vexthar said, his voice carrying easily across the hall despite the translator doing its work, are perhaps the most optimistic species I have encountered. He gestured toward the human delegation with one clawed hand. They believe that 300 years of spaceflight qualifies them to stand beside true warriors. Ambassador Day, the senior human diplomat, remained calm. He had been warned this might happen. The Krill Empire held enormous influence in the coalition, and they had made no secret of their opposition to humanity's membership application. The coalition has always welcomed species who demonstrate both technological advancement and martial capability, Day said carefully. Humanity has met both requirements. Vexithar's laugh was a harsh barking sound. Several other alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. The insectoid representative from the hive worlds clicked her mandibles in what might have been disapproval, but she said nothing. Nobody challenged the Krill. Martial capability. Vexthar stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow across the human delegation. Your species has soft skin that tears like wet paper. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no redundant organs. A single strike from a Krill warrior would shatter your fragile bones. He focused his attention on Jiwoo, who had unconsciously straightened her posture. Look at this one. Your warriors are so weak you send females to military summits. Lieutenant Hyun, standing beside Jiwoo, tensed. She put a hand on his arm, a gentle reminder to stay calm. She had dealt with worse insults during her career. Gender discrimination was something humanity had mostly moved past, but apparently, the galaxy still had some learning to do. Captain Jiwoo is one of our most decorated combat veterans, Ambassador Day said, his voice still diplomatic but with an edge now. She has led successful operations in some of Earth's most hostile environments. Earth, Vexthar said, loading the word with contempt. A paradise world with gentle gravity and abundant resources. Your deadliest predators are small cats and reptiles that kill only through venom. You have never faced true danger. Jiwoo spoke for the first time. With respect, Colonel, danger is relative. The hall went quiet. Several delegates leaned forward, interested now. Humans rarely spoke up in coalition gatherings. They were too new, too eager to fit in. Vexthar turned his full attention to her. Up close, he was even more impressive. His eyes were like polished black stones, showing no emotion she could read. His teeth, visible behind thin lips, were designed for tearing meat. Is it? He asked. Then perhaps you would care to demonstrate your species' capability. Ambassador Day stood quickly. Colonel, I don't think... A challenge, Vexthar continued, speaking over the diplomat. My finest Apex Guard squad against any human squad of your choosing. Full contact combat simulation. If your warriors defeat mine, I will personally sponsor humanity's full membership in the Coalition Defense Force. The offer hung in the air. It was more than generous. It was unprecedented. Vexthar's sponsorship alone would override most objections to human membership. And if we lose? Jiwoo asked. When you lose, Vexthar corrected. Humanity withdraws its application for 50 standard years. You return to your small corner of space and grow stronger before attempting to join the adults. Ambassador Day grabbed Jiwoo's arm. Captain, we need to discuss this with Earth Command. This is a diplomatic matter, not a military one. But Jiwoo was already calculating. She had read every file available on Krill physiology. She had studied their combat doctrine, their training methods, their victories. She knew their strengths. More importantly, she knew their weaknesses, though she suspected the Krill themselves did not. What are the parameters? She asked. Vexithar's expression might have been surprised, though it was hard to tell on his alien features. 72 hours. Hostile environment simulation. Victory through either elimination or objective capture. Standard coalition combat rules. 72 hours. 3 full days. Jiwoo almost smiled. Captain, Ambassador Day hissed, you cannot accept this. The Apex Guard has never been defeated. They are genetically engineered super soldiers with centuries of combat experience. Then we have nothing to lose, Jiwoo said quietly. She looked up at Vexthar. I accept your challenge, Colonel. The hall erupted in noise. Delegates were shouting questions in a dozen languages. The translator system struggled to keep up. Ambassador Day looked like he might faint. Lieutenant Hyun was staring at Jiwoo with wide eyes, but Vexthar was smiling. It was not a pleasant expression. Excellent. We begin in 2 standard days. That should give you time to select your warriors and make peace with your gods. He turned to address the assembled delegates. Let this be a lesson about the difference between ambition and ability. The Apex Guard will show these humans what true combat looks like. As the colonel strode from the hall, his heavy footsteps echoing on the metal deck, Jiwoo remained still. She was already planning, already thinking. Humans had one advantage that nobody in this hall understood yet, one evolutionary gift that made them unique in the galaxy. Humans did not know when to quit. They did not know how to give up, and 72 hours was a very long time.